Let's stay with our main news now and go live to New York. We can speak to Mark Goldwasser, who was working near the World Trade Center on September the 11th, 2001. And since that day, he has been dealing not just with the trauma of what he witnessed, but also the health consequences of being so close to the disaster. Mark, thank you very much for joining us here, because I know that you're undergoing cancer treatment currently from where you're speaking to us in New York.
Correct. Good evening, Mark.
I want to turn to what happened to you and how you suffered the consequences personally in a second. But first, what did you witness that morning of September the 11th, 20 years ago?
You know, the day is forever seared into my memory. I was CEO of a brokerage firm at 120 Wall Street, directly across from the World Trade Center. I'd heard that a small plane had hit the World Trade Center, that's the north building, and I quickly moved to our conference room, which had an expansive view of the fire and of both World Trade Centers. It was a beautiful fall day, just like today, magnificent weather. I opened the window, and in the 15 minutes between the first plane, the second plane, the whole of downtown New York was filled with sirens, police boats. And I remember paper, that A4 paper flying everywhere. That's what I remembered. It was just like a ticker tape parade. And I knew there was no ticker tape parade today. And then we heard the sound of this wide body jet coming straight at us. And at the last moment, the plane veered and crashed into the second building. And then I knew something terrible was amiss and was time to evacuate as quickly as possible.
And how did you get out?
Well, myself and one of my friends, first we evacuated 2 floors of our office, mandatory evacuation. And we walked down 30 floors. And because the building, 120 Broadway, is a very old building, there was a subway, a Lexington subway stop in the lobby, and we just jumped on the subway, got to Grand Central, and I was fortunately on the last train out of Manhattan. I made it home to Westchester.
That moment, seeing that aeroplane heading towards you, must have been absolutely terrifying, and I'm sure there were psychological consequences, but it was the physical consequences that came back to haunt you when you returned to the office shortly after that. Tell us about that, please.
Well, the downtown was like quarantined for 2 weeks. Then the secretary of the EPA, was the ex-governor Chrissy Todd Whitman, had said that she declared that downtown is open for business, and we moved back into the offices. Because I'd left in such a rush, and because I'd opened the conference room window, there was an inch of that carcinogen white stuff, let's say, that had blown into the conference room and had gone all over the office. So the office was covered in this white dust.
And then when did you realize that spending time in the office with that white dust had affected your body?
What happened was, about 10 years later, I was on a roller coaster in Las Vegas, and I broke my back on the roller coaster. I got back to New York, and I got treatment. And I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. And then I started dealing with the multiple myeloma. And that was, 11 years ago.
And what treatments have you had?
Well, everyone says, oh, they call me Goldie, you look great. But yeah, I've broken my back 3 times. I've had 2 stem cell transplants. I've been in a number of multiple myeloma trials. And right now, I'm on a trial at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, specifically for multiple myeloma. It's a phase 1 trial. And so far, thank God, the results have been good.
To get what happened to you acknowledged, didn't it? But you did receive compensation.
Yes, there was a fireman who passed away called Zadroga, and a fund was set up in his name, and I received compensation at least 5 years ago from the Zadroga 9/11 fund.
What do you think of the US response after the terrorist attacks and how they've dealt with things since? How does that make you feel?
You know, Mark, it's a sense of deja vu that everything's changed, but nothing's changed. 20 years later, same kind of day that 9/11 happened. You know, my thoughts are that the people of this country are better than the government of this country, and we've been let down by our government on a number of situations linked to 9/11. I just mentioned to you that the EPA said that downtown New York was basically the air was clean and everyone could go back to work. And really, there was a carcinogen bomb that hit the whole of downtown New York. You know, we still have the same problem with Islamic fundamentalism. It sounds like we haven't really gone anywhere in terms of the fundamental issues and problems. Nothing's changed in 20 years.
Except what happened to you could have thrown somebody, but you keep defying the people who were behind this terrorist attack with your determination, despite this bone marrow cancer.
Correct. Well, I'm lucky because I think back, I was 43 years old. But as I've spent time in the world of multiple myeloma and cancer, and when I meet younger people and I say to them, you know, what do you have? And they say myeloma. And I said, why? Where? And they say, well, we lived in Tribeca or went to school downtown. For some reason, that bothers me more than what's happened to myself. I mean, I feel terrible for the young people or young parents and families who live downtown that have to deal with this, you know, and not necessarily multiple myeloma and bone marrow cancers, but there's a whole suite of cancers that are linked to 9/11.
Mark, we wish you the best of luck with your treatment. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you, sir.